Join with computer audio. Okay, can you hear me?
There we go.
Oh, there. So I'm on my streaming setup and my digital SLR is mounted upside down, and I forgot this software can't flip it. So that was a problem. Also, I was on the streaming PC when I called you. My mic wasn't working. I couldn't hear you. Anyway, I've now worked out the computer issues.
I was going to say it was a great touch, you being upside down when you first connected.
I thought you might thought I was memeing there or something. Oh god! All right, so I've got my audio recorder on. All right, we're recording audio.
Excellent.
So we're just doing this as a pre-recorded thing, aren't we?
Yes, yeah, just pre-recorded, nothing live.
Cool.
And yeah, basically, I number one wanted to say thank you for offering a rebuttal. You know, I am never above criticism. In fact, I embrace it. That's how we learn and we grow. And
Sure.
and you did so in a very polite and respectful way. I mean, you and I have had interactions before on Twitter and things like that, and always enjoyed your opinion.
Yeah,
But
appreciate that.
but yeah, main thing I wanted to do is just kind of get together, and obviously we have kind of some differing opinions here. I wanted to get number one. What was your honest gut reaction to that video? And then we can kind of start dissecting.
I guess there's, it's an interesting one. So if it was just an RTX 4060 review, so ignore obviously the thumbnail, the title. I was like, oh, Jeff's done a review. Let's have a look. Yeah, I honestly had no problems with the review at all. Using mid-range hardware for testing mid-range GPUs, I'm not opposed to that. And yeah, I was happy with your opinions and stuff like that. So there's really nothing that I found upsetting or offensive or wrong, let's say, about your review, really. It was more, I think it got posted in our Discord, and someone said, oh, this is interesting, and I was in the thumbnail, so I was like, oh, okay, and then I saw the title, I was like,
Let's
okay,
have
interesting.
a look.
And then I made my comment for you.
First off, we talked very briefly about the thumbnail in YouTube comments back and forth, and well, yes, I did meme the thumbnail a little bit, and it was somewhat in an attempt to get some clicks, because sometimes I'll do a video card review and it'll just get buried by you and other Steve and things like that. And so it's like, how can I bring a little bit different take and, assert my opinion and get the clicks at the same time? And so I will fully admit to a little bit of clickbait there. But I think what got lost is because I used the word wrong in the thumbnail. Is all of a sudden everyone is on the defensive from the word go, even though the first sentence out of my mouth is none of them are wrong, but I don't think they're entirely correct either. And I spent the first 4 minutes of the video breaking down, if you use a standardized test bench, it is the most sound way to get that top to bottom data. And that's why we all watch you and Gamers Nexus and things like that. It's because you guys are exactly correct when it comes to that full product stack breakdown. My opinion was, is that giving a consumer who is potentially going to actually spend $300 on this card, is it giving them the best picture of what performance they can expect? And the reason I say that is a budget gamer isn't necessarily going to run everything at ultra settings. And you also mentioned in the comment on kind of a rebuttal of me that I said, a standardized test bench is just a test of the top end card and how worse everything is from that. And you said we never test against a 4090 or a 4080. In your benchmarks on this one, though, in your chart is a 7900 XT and a 4070 Ti, which is more than the system combined that I tested on. And
I was to say the reason those cards are included is just so you have some sort of reference point as to how much fast those products could potentially be. Just let you know where they fall. Obviously, the focus of the review was on the 4060, the 3060, the 3060 Ti, the 6650 XT, and the 6700 XT. So that was the focus. That was what was discussed. But you just have a few cards that are a bit slower, a bit faster, just so you can get a sort of a feel of where they fit in the product stack. So that's really the only reason we do that.
Right.
But yeah, obviously 4080, 4090, they're not relevant because then you're going a step above. I mean, you could include them, but I think that it
But then
shrinks
your
down the
benchmark
data
just
at the
shrinks
low end.
that
Yeah,
much further.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, so I certainly understand that they're probably not relevant and they don't add anything. So that's the only reason they're there.
Right. And I fully get that. But my counterpoint would be on a standardized test bench, and if you're displaying all of that data, and if someone is looking, I have $300, I don't have $800. That those cards are not relevant to me in that review. While for a product stack perspective, it might be fully a relevant data point. I don't feel it's that relevant when it comes to straight up reviewing the 4060 because those cards exist, and I kind of touched on this towards the end of my video. I think it's starting to skew some perception of like, well, we got a 65% performance gain from the 3090 to the 4090. Why didn't we get 65% from the 3060 to the 4060? And either from a reviewer standpoint or from a consumer standpoint, we're starting to, and that point of view has been going for a while now. Of the top end is getting even higher, and the bottom end is kind of, now we're getting TikTok a la Intel.
I mean, that's honestly, that's a big part of the problem. So previously, 6900 XTs, RTX 3090s, they've existed. They've just been dumb products. Like you get 10% more performance for double the price, which is really how it should be. Those sort of premium products, if people want the bragging rights or whatever.
Right.
And that, from my perspective, becomes a big problem when NVIDIA sort of turned around and gone, oh, okay, so you've said that 3090 is dumb. Well, we want the 4090 not to be dumb. So how about we just price everything accordingly down from that? And that's what's caused this mess.
Yes.
So, we're just really not standing for that. Like, I don't like that at all. And we'll push back against that and continue to, and hopefully the next generation, we do get a performance improvement. So that we're pretty firm on that one. Yeah. And then as for the hardware you test with, like, I do totally disagree that the way we test isn't helpful or doesn't give you the full picture or is useful to people who are buying a $300 product. I find that I think I see where you're coming from, where you're sort of suggesting that if someone's looking at buying a $300 card and then the $400 card might be 30-40% faster, and that's tempting them perhaps into purchasing that. But then if they have, in your instance, a 5600G, that might only convert to a 5% performance uplift.
Right.
So I haven't really got a problem with that. There's basically no way where you can cover all bases unless you just, delay your review for 6 months while you test every possible configuration.
Absolutely. Right.
Well, I don't necessarily I would never call yours, not helpful or wrong. I would just say, hey, it's really cool. Jeff's tested what some people might argue is a more realistic configuration for $300 product. And again, though, for that data to be really useful, it would be great to have like an RTX 4070 included with the 4060 or 4060 Ti, because based on just your review, we don't actually know if it's not worth getting a 4060 Ti or a 4070 because you didn't test that.
You mentioned if you're only testing two $300 cards, how do you know which one is truly the one to go with? I will say in this particular case, especially with CPUs in general, the last couple of generations of CPUs in particular. So you've got your Zen 3, Zen 4, and Zen 5, and then your Tiger Lake and up. You've the CPU performance as far as single threaded on every single CPU, even from the $250 and up. Your single threaded performance is kind of near the same, with the exception of the couple of top tiers, your 13600K, 13900K. So there's less CPU things holding the GPUs back since we've had kind of this renaissance of, I know you were probably around for the the original 1 gigahertz race, where we literally doubled every three to five months. We're kind of there again when it comes to CPUs, and so your budget CPUs are holding up very, very well, even against higher end testing. And I will say my 7600 and 4600, I came up with almost the exact same differences as your test bed did in my review. So
Yep.
And like I said, in 5 out of my 12 overall tests, because I tested DLSS, FSR, and standard rasterization, I ran 12 total tests. 5 of them were straight up ties, and then we had a couple of gains one way, a couple of gains the other way. The largest difference was 13% outside of Cyberpunk with ray trace enabled. And so it's like they were fairly even. And my my overall thought, and I usually, when I approach a review, try to approach it from the consumer experience point first, which starts with budget and then goes to, if I purchase that thing, would I be happy? Everything else outside of that. Because some people will religiously watch hardware unbox videos, and they will print out the charts, and they'll shop Amazon and Newegg and everything and go, that's the GPU that I want, that one right there. Other people, maybe they buy a GPU for $300 and then come back and then they learn it's crap. They're not happy with that. Maybe they only look at the 2 new cards. Hey, they release a 7600 and a 4060. Which one? Also, the question that you answer, and I think this is where kind of the crux of the difference of review styles comes in, is I think the question that you answer definitively is, where does a particular GPU fall in the overall global stack of cards that are in front of us? So how powerful is it, and what is your frames per dollar kind of thing? Versus if someone has $300, they're obviously not going to be expecting 1440 Ultra. They're not going to be doing all those things. If they lower settings a couple tweaks, what is possible with the cards that they buy? And that's where I kind of try to fill in a little bit of the gaps. Because if someone were to ask you, hey, what graphics card do I need right now to play Hogwarts at 1440p, 120 FPS? Would your chart be able to give that answer?
I never use R charts for like outright FPS numbers, because obviously the numbers do vary quite a lot in the game, the quality settings, all that sort of stuff. So we've always stressed that it's about margins, not about the actual FPS number.
Right.
That becomes more of a system benchmark. And again, then you talk about the nuances of benchmarking. That's where you just go down a rabbit hole, because what performance do people want? What quality settings do they want? What other limitations? It becomes, you could go on forever, basically.
Like I said, from my perspective, that's where I try to aim a little bit more, is not necessarily, NVIDIA only improved by 11% this generation, or so-and-so. It's, hey, this card exists, and maybe I'm looking at it in a brand new, buying it off Micro Center shelf. Maybe I'm looking to buy this card and it's the only card option in a pre-built. And so what can I get with this card? Because there's other aspects and other avenues that people use to buy PCs, go out and game. And while you say that, you can't rely on you for like FPS metrics, as far as like expect this FPS with this game, when that's the only metric that you're presenting, people are going, oh, I need a 7900 XT or a 4070 Ti to play at 140 FPS. I'm just going to go buy a PS5. Versus, hey, you know what? If you turn textures down to high and then turn on FSR balanced, here's the issues with FSR, and if you're okay with that change, or a little bit of shimmering here in the hair or something like that, hey, look, you're playing at 120 FPS now, and that's what this card can do.
My perspective on that is we're doing a technical analysis type review. So we're letting you know, for the money, what is offering you the best value. And it's like all products relative to one another. What I see you suggesting is, I wouldn't say it's not a review, but it's less of a review and more of a, hey, you decided you want a 4060, or the product you're buying has a 4060 in it. This isn't so much a product review. It's more, what can it do? So with the appropriate quality settings, how much FPS can you get? And we've sort of done that content as well. And we've framed it as that. It's more of a, what can this thing do in current generation games? Not how does it compare to other things? Because when you're sort of doing a review and comparing to other things, again, the quality settings, the preset doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's low, medium, or high, within reason. for most titles, we've found that scaling between Radeon and GeForce GPUs, unless there's some funky setting that, you know, blows out performance.
There's always the weird one that,
yeah. Generally speaking, you'll see that scaling, we used to do this a lot between like the RX 580 and the GTX 1060. Like scaling would be pretty much the same. If one was 10% faster with medium, it'd be 10-15% faster with like ultra. They scaled pretty consistently, and that's really what we're focused on, is that scaling. Like I said, I don't really think either is technically right or wrong or better than the other. I just think it's two different ways of going about it. And again, the problem with the 4060, I think one of the quotes. Okay, so you said the answer can't be to avoid buying anything new and only look for fire sales of previous generation cards without talking. And then he said, without talking to a single other reviewer, I'm guessing the RX 6700 XT is going to be mentioned multiple times, which, hey, fair enough. Okay. So I guess my question to you, well, I've got two questions there for you.
Okay. Yeah.
One would be, what sort of constitutes as a fire sale for you? Because like there's several models of 6700 XT which have been heavily discounted for 9 to 10 months now, but as of 10 months ago, it was cheaper than a 4060 Ti with more VRAM and very similar performance. So that's sort of where I come at that one. So I'm not sure if you were aware that they'd been at that, because we do, you know, Tim does the monthly GPU pricing, so we've kept a really close eye on this. So we've known that these RDNA 2 GPUs
they have been trending. They have been trending down. They have been trending down for quite some time. I do keep very close eye on you know, budgets of cards, especially the sub $500 price points. My definition of a fire sale, and I think another problem with, we'll just say the market in general right now, is because of the post-crypto overstock situation. We know NVIDIA and AMD both grossly overbought or grossly overallocated on TSMC for the number of chips that they had, and then TSMC went, no, we're not canceling your order, you can take these now. That has led to situations that we haven't seen in the past, where the previous gen cards are now competing with the current gen stack. And I will say that is complicating the situation by quite a bit. Unless you follow those numbers every single month, it is really difficult to know where to jump on, what price point's the right one, what model has this feature, this VRAM, what, you know, where does it lie in the stack. As the release review, it's hard for me to say right out, the 4060 is absolute crap and shouldn't exist, go buy a 6650 XT instead, when that card is now out of stock 2 months later. Because a release review is, for the majority of reviewers, is the final opinion of that card. I know you guys do sometimes go back and you'll do a 2 years later or something like that, or, you know, build guides and things like that. And some reviewers do that, but if a card is crap from the outset, it better not show up in one of their build guides 2 months later. Otherwise, what is your opinion on this card? Is it a good value or is it not a good value? Is it a waste of space? And so that was the root of that comment of, don't just recommend going out and buying a fire sale GPU, because if I watch this 6 weeks after release, I'm going to look for that GPU and go, well, that's $500 now because it's out of stock or whatever else. Or, you know, go buy a used 2080 Ti, or go buy this card because it's a great value. Yeah, those cards are out there on the used market, depending on your region and depending on everything else. And, you know, it's a hard recommendation to make when you're reviewing a brand new card for a brand new build.
Yeah, I do get where you're coming from there, but that's just the nature of video content on YouTube.
Exist.
Like,
right.
Well, they exist, and it's not just the pricing and availability of certain parts, because we've always faced that, right? Like, you know, the previous generation GPUs were even worse for that, so those reviews were invalidated instantly.
Yes,
but that's just, like I said, it's the nature of the reviews and the video content that you can't go back and update it without doing a whole new content piece, because you know, all your results could be invalidated tomorrow, and mine, because AMD could release a driver that boosts performance by 10%. Hey, we worked out the problem with RDNA 3. Not saying that's going to happen, but if that happened, it would fully invalidate the review anyway. So I sort of see it as, my job as the reviewer to educate my audience at that point in time what is available to them and what the best option is. And it's a sad reality that, hey, the card that you could have got for basically this money 9 months ago, and we will probably at the time would have said, hey, let's hold out, next gen GPUs aren't that far away, you'll probably get something better for this price. It turns out, if we all had a crystal ball, we'd say go back 9 months, buy the thing, enjoy 9 months of gaming with your friends or whatever it may be, and forget about this series, wait for GeForce 50 series, RDNA 4. I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, I don't want to sort of ignore the fact that, look, the RTX 4060, while not as bad as the 4060 Ti, it's still a crap product. Like, it loses to the 3060 there are situations where it happens. There'll be about 6 games that I've tested out of about 40 where it's slower. The 1440p before, so if you would have tested at 1080p, you probably would have been even happier with the 4060 because it does do a bit better there, but that limited 128-bit wide memory bus really hammers it at 1440p.
Yeah, I did notice that bus coming in and hitting a couple of titles pretty hard in my review too. So to circle back just quickly to what go for it.
We backed up. It's probably about 10 minutes ago now. You were saying that you looked at my data, and although you used a 5600G and I used a 7800X 3D, that our results were actually remarkably similar. You tested 7 individual games, I tested 15 individual games, and I actually went and had a look at that because I was like, I wonder if that argument of testing with a more realistic configuration actually leads to wildly different results. And you actually found that, it sounds like you already know this, the RTX 4060, you found that it was 2% faster on average, or using a geo mean across the 7 games. And I found that it was 1.5% slower. So you found basically plus or minus 2%, which is like 1 FPS at around 60 FPS.
Right.
So we actually found, me using my technically correct but not necessarily helpful result, and you using yours, we actually got the same result. So I found that quite funny. Obviously, you made your thumbnail and title before my review went live, and you weren't attacking me or specifically mentioning my review, but I just found that interesting that we ended up with the same results anyway. At least in terms of margins.
I mean, I might look like an idiot, but I do know what I'm doing. That's quite funny. The main point of the video wasn't even to punch up or Steve and Paul and Jay, a bunch of idiots, and this is the way I do it. Obviously, that was the meme, and that was the get your attention. But I intentionally spent, like I said, the next 4 minutes going, no, what they do is absolutely invaluable. I think there's more ways we can look at this that might answer a couple extra questions. Sure, the 4060 is only 4% faster or 11% faster, I think your results said, than the 3060 on average. But what is it actually going to do in a budget system? Can it play these games at 90 to 144 FPS? And one of the arguments that I made in the video is I ignored 1080p testing entirely, because if I can get a 144 hertz monitor, 1440p for $150, 1080p gaming is dead. And
that's how we look at it.
Right. And so for me, there was no point in testing that resolution because, number one, the results are only going to be better. And number two, I don't think it's realistic for someone going out and buying this level of PC today.
Yeah, I think it's a really good angle of handling day one reviews to make your content more unique. I think there's just probably a better way of promoting it. And like you say, like it could even be like the thumbnail could be, so the RTX 4060 sucks, but what can it do? Right. And then the video is like, you're acknowledging, look, I'm not going against the grain, guys. Like, I'm not super wrapped with this product, but soon it's going to be potentially the only option at this price point. People are going to have to buy it. So I'm going to show you what it can do. So I think that's a really cool angle, and that's something you could look at doing. Yeah. I think that would work well.
I will say this is not the first time I've been on the receiving end of some crossfire for a review that disagreed with you.
Okay. Well, sorry to interrupt you, but I was going to say, I suspected that might be a bit of that going on. And I have a lot of, friends who are reviewers that I talk to, smaller channels. And when I say small, I don't mean like 300,000 subscribers. Yours is quite a substantial channel, but guys with 10,000 and stuff like that, that
Mhm.
the comments are just like Harbor Unboxed tested more, or Harbor Unboxed did this. And I'm like, yeah, I hate to sort of hear that, because I don't want it to be like that, or Harbor
Right.
Unboxed said this, therefore you're wrong.
Right.
So that's tough. And I appreciate that, some of the guys have to deal with those sort of comments, and it creates a bit of resentment with us. And we're just like, well, we're just doing our
There's
thing.
not even any resentment, because I'll watch your video and go, oh damn, he made a great point. Like,
yeah.
like,
But all I'm getting at is I get like the comment section, and people will harass you because you didn't agree with the one thing they believe in or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's really annoying. I think if you had taken that angle as well, you probably would have got a better response from your audience. But
yeah.
Again, I get it, man. Like, it sucks putting all that time and effort in, being under the pump, lacking sleep, getting it all done, and then it just goes out to a sea of bloody RTX 4060 reviews, and you get less views than what you normally get. That's massively deflating.
Yeah, I've done a couple other day one reviews, and I'll release it at embargo with you and the other channels, and your numbers fly up, and mine is a solid 10 out of 10.
But yes, the comment section can be lots of fun, and we know that more than anyone.
It's a fickle bunch.
yeah, to say the least.
The last time I ran afoul was the GTX 1650. I did a review on that. It was a $180 card, but the MSRP of the actual one was supposed to be $149. And so I reviewed the card, and I said, if you're in this range and you want like a $150 card, it's a 65% or so uplift over the 1080 Ti. Solid gainer, same price point. But I said, but man, there's a couple of cards that are right there on top at like, 200 or 220. If you get too high up that product stack, you just need to jump to the next level. You need to spend another $20 and get an extra 40% of performance. But in that little gap, don't spend more than $149. It's a great card. I was lambasted for like 2 weeks in comments going, Tech Yes City and Hardware Unboxed and Gamer, they all said this card is a waste of sand and everything else. But then 2 months later, the RX 570 dried up because of crypto content, and then people were putting out, if you're looking for a budget card, the 1650 is looking pretty sweet for $180. And I went, yes.
Well, yeah, again, I guess that comes back to what we were talking about earlier with outgoing stuff. Your opinion on a product can change. Like, you're allowed to change your opinion if the price changed. Like RX 6600, we did not like that product at launch. Way too expensive.
Yeah.
But I mean, it launched during the cryptocurrency boom, so whatever. But still, that doesn't mean that
what was it,
people
330 or something like that at launch?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and then it ended up dropping, and then it became a good product. It was like the must-buy product. I don't even know what it is now. It's 180 or something. I don't even know. I've looked at it for a while. Very cheap. Nvidia didn't do us any favors when you're getting 4060 Ti's that are slower than 3060 Ti's and like Hogwarts and a handful of other popular titles, and the same thing with the 3060. But yeah, I also, I get depressed about it as well. I've heard you talk about Pascal and stuff in your videos, and that was such a fun time. Like, I love, because you and I are passionate about this, right? It's why we do it.
Right.
So, and I get where you're coming from, where as well, you're sort of wanting to see what the 46, you're trying to get excited about this new technology. and I totally appreciate that and get it, because man, when these new cards get announced and it rocks up in the mail and I'm like a little kid, like that's why I still do all this work, because I'm still like what I was 20 years ago when I got my first product.
I open every single box.
I'm like, let's check this thing out. And then I plug it in, I start running the results. I'm like, okay.
It's Superman 64 all over again. Okay.
You move on to the next game, and you're like, uh-oh. And then, you get to the end, and you're like, there's nothing good I can say about this, or it's, there's very few things I can say about this. And when it's like, the 6th or 7th time, and you start to sort of hate what you're doing.
And I totally get that vibe as well. And part of my review is, or this video in particular was, it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. Can we just play the damn games? Like that was part of it as well.
I guess that was my point when you were sort of saying, I'm guessing other reviewers will talk about those cards, and I'm like, well, if you know that, and we sort of got the answer, but it's like, you've already got your answer as well. Really that that's the card to recommend. But you know, I get also where you're coming from. You've explained that, you know, you expect that card will sell. I honestly don't know when the 6700 XT will sell at.
Right.
We've heard there is just an insane amount of them, mountains of them. But having said that, look, I could look stupid. They could be sold out tomorrow. But we have heard from reliable sources that those things are going to be around for a while yet.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't buy an RTX 4060. It doesn't mean that the 6700 XT is outright always the best option. You know, there are things like frame generation, better power efficiency, all those sort of things. But what it does mean is that the 4060 is massively underwhelming if there's a better or arguably better product on the market. Like,
absolutely right.
And you know why that is. But traditionally, when we've got excited about products like Pascal, like when Pascal launched, or even, you know, the GeForce 30 series, there was no part where you were like, oh, that's a little bit slower in some games than the previous generation. It was like, no, it was just faster across the board, like 40% faster.
I actually went back and watched your guys' day one review of the 1060 today, and of where it slams the 980 in 17 out of 20 games. It jumped 2 tiers, and people want that again, and I'm right there with them. Like I totally do. And then you know, you review this card at the same $299 price point, and you're going, it's just not there.
I mean, the truth is, Nvidia can do it if they wanted to.
Yes.
But I get there's inflation, there's increased manufacturing costs. All those factors are true. But they can still do a lot better than $300 for that tiny bit of silicon. But there's basically, you know, there's probably 3 main reasons why they haven't. One of them being they've come off the back of the cryptocurrency boom, and those big fat margins are something they just absolutely do not want to part with. And then they don't
lied
have
to their shareholders, so
well, they don't have to part with them because AI has come along and picked up the slack there. So all the silicon's going towards that. And then keeping them warm and comfortable in the gaming sector is the fact that AMD is like, we'll just do what you're doing.
Right.
So, there's no downwards pressure from AMD. And without that,
if ever I've always said AMD is such a flummoxing company to follow, because right when you think they have the golden opportunity to just go for the jugular, they're like, no, you take this one. Every time.
Yeah. It's perplexing. I mean, sometimes there's been sort of reasons that kind of make sense. It's like, okay. But yeah, I don't know why they're not going harder after them, to be honest, because...
Right, when Zen 3 came out and Intel flatlined between 9th and 10th gen and whatnot, I'm going, oh man, if they undercut by $100, it's game over. And they charged more. They went up. They wanted those margins, and it's like, you were right there.
At least on the CPU front, they've made impressive inroads and done well. But the GPU stuff's just, and it just seems so short-sighted. Like, make some inroads now, get back some market share, and set yourselves up for when you know there isn't the AI or the cryptocurrency boom, and you've got to sell GPUs to someone, and gamers are sitting right there. But hey, I always say to Tim, I'm like, well, that's why they get paid the big bucks. What the hell do I know? Like, but it's going to look pretty silly if AI cools off and there's not the ongoing demand they thought there would be, and then they turn back to gamers like, so guys, want some GPUs? So, and then AMD's still got no market share, and Nvidia's just sitting there pretty with their mind share and their market share. But anyway, I don't know. I don't know about all that stuff. I just review the cards as they come out. So
way above
I'll just keep doing that. I'll keep doing my little benchmarking thing, and we'll see where it all falls.
That's right. Don't want to take up all your day.
No, that's all right.
Very much appreciated. And great to finally actually, you know, talk to you instead of just typing things out 8 hours apart.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely have to do it again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I was more than happy to. And when I left the comment and you were like, let's have a chat about it, I was like, sure, I'm all for that. So that's good. Yeah. Appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah, no, keep doing what you're doing. I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Maybe a couple less upside down thumbnails, but other than that...
See what you can do. Well, thanks for having me on, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll do it again soon.
All right. Cheers, man.